Move that down a little bit. Okay, I think that is... We are finally back. Should be looking good on both aspects of that. So we have a number... Oh, that's right. That's why I thought it was 11. This is Avernus Marine. All right, so we have... This time, we are back after a little bit of a trip overseas, but we will have some new models to paint. Kind of a bit of a deadline. We do want these model guys ready for Saturday, where I'm expected to play some games here, at least on the actual tabletop. So we have some Hellblasters. We have a squadron of 10 of these guys, all primed and ready to go. So we'll be using mostly a base coat of Caliban Green with some... with an overlayer of AK's dark green as well to get our more Dark Angel-esque type colors. So we have a dark green from AK as well. And then we go down and into something like my highlight green color. Where is that? Yes. We have some light green as well as a highlight-esque color for these guys here. So working with that, a plasma effect. I could go with some red plasma, but I think on red on the bodies, we have to go with what we have currently so far, with some Arctic gem and a little bit of brighter blues as well. Maybe some blue contrast to help that pop a little bit more. So I have a couple ideas for that, but we'll see to it what that really looks like later on. But for now, let's go ahead and get started. Let's see, my number 2 brush. Yep. Let's see, I do need to get more water for my painting cup, but that's what I forgot to refill on. But I hope nonetheless everyone was doing well without me for a little bit. We should be back to our normal scheduling, to our standard streaming of Warhammer and perhaps some other games down the line as well in the future once we get something set up for that. So with that all in mind, let's see how we can get started here. So I do want to scoop out some Caliban Green from Citadel as to get started, to get down to the main armor plates of this guy. I think we can try, I don't know if gold really work for these guys as shoulder pads, because they're not necessarily the most elite out of these guys, but maybe we can get away with some yellows, maybe some light yellows, but we'll get to that when it's time to get to that. As always, we need to shake up this paint pot to really make sure that we have the paint spread around where we need it to. So let's get some onto our wet palette here. Okay, and let's get started here. So really want to make sure we can get a good first coat of this Caliban Green, and then that'll help us get underside of it as we layer on things like the dark green from AKs to give it a bit more of a pop afterwards. Because I personally do like my Dark Angels, which these guys are going to be, as some people might have already known from previous streams. But the Dark Angel scheme of darker green is nice, but I do like my greens to pop out a little bit more so you can easily see their what they're rocking on the tabletop here. Make sure my cord is not in the way of my paintbrush. Okay. See if we can get a nice even coat all the way down to where the shoulder pad edge begins, or the shoulder pad trim, that is. Okay, so now we can go a bit more broader strokes as we go across through his underarm. Let's get that first coat. We'll highlight the lighter greens on top of it later. So for now, this is what we are looking at so far. So mostly I want this coat to kind of get a nice even coat and to kind of get between all the ridges and raised parts of this guy so that the highlights can really take form once we come back after this layer has dried. Okay, let's see if we could really make sure we can get that little edge between his hand and the gun. The underside of the gun will be a different color, but we can make do with this for now. Okay. All right, so this Caliban green might be kind of hard to see. This camera doesn't like to focus much on either, but hopefully you can see it there as to what this first layer of green will look like. And we'll come back later with some lighter greens on top once this first layer of paint dries. We really just need to focus on this being evenly spread as a way we can work around with the lighter colors on top after the fact. Okay, so we'll take that for now. And let's go down towards his legs here. See if we can get good layering going with the brush the way it is right now. So definitely the legs will get a lot more attention with edge highlights on the armor as this progresses. But for now, we just want a starting layer to work with for highlights to go on afterwards. This, even though I still got some on my wet palettes, coming out a little bit dilute on the paint, but it's fine. We can come back and add another layer if we think it's a little bit too weak right now. As I'm kind of pushing the paint around a little bit, but should be all right when we come back for another layer. So make sure we get first contact with all the surfaces that we want to. That way we know what to come back with some of the highlights on the lighter greens when it's time to fill that in. I just want to give this model just a little bit of depth as it is right now with the coloring, if the camera will focus on this guy, as to what the areas will look like. And we get a disconnect, of course, our first one on Twitch. Will I get reconnected soon enough? Okay. Looks like Twitch is back for a second there. I don't know, it kind of drops sometimes. We always get at least one in every single one of our streams, so it's not necessarily anything that's new per se. Okay, we need a bit more Caliban green. I'm all out on my wet palette, so let me reset my brush here. And let's go get some more paint. Again, we're using Citadel's Caliban green as a way to get started here on this first layer of paint onto this model. Let's try to really get into some of these crevices here with this new layer of Caliban green. The underside of this forearm needs to get a good coat on that. All the way into under that side there as well. Okay, very good. Go a bit more. Let's start putting some on his helmet. Let's get that part there as well. So we're coating the helmet and some of the related areas around that first lip of the upper body. Okay. And we start going to his power pack. So I think maybe the knobs around his extra backpack extension there should be silver as well as the cord. So we can avoid that for now, but a lot of the other parts can still be the same dark green as well. Okay. I think that will do for that section here. Let's just make sure this part is coated as well. Sometimes the paint kind of slides off when the color is a bit too dilute on the brush side. But that should be okay because we'll be coating it on top with the lighter colors anyway. So they have our first base. Oh, actually, no, I just realized his right thigh needs a little bit more attention here. Kind of missed all that. As well as under his body. Okay. All right, and that will do for the very first coat for this this Hellblaster. We'll come back when he's dry to start doing the second layers. I do have enough Caliban green to move on to the second model, and it's a little bit subdued, especially on the camera, but there's that smallest amount of green on those areas that we want to paint a brighter color eventually as well. We start moving towards it. So let's go ahead and get this guy started here. Same idea, we're just gonna go over all the areas that we want green with this first layer of Caliban green, and then we work our way up to some lighter colors depending on the region and how that highlight will show on the model itself. Oop, I do a great job of dropping my model. That's one of the stream classics, is just letting them go and hit the table, but we'll be okay. So now because we kind of got the first model sorted out, we can quickly go over all the spots in the same manner for this guy as well. Should be a little bit quicker, in theory, to get this guy's areas all affected by the paint. And so we can go back to the first one and start our next step of him. There's some mold lines that are coming up. I thought I did a good job building these. I built these guys on stream as well a little while back, but some mold lines are showing on the model, which is kind of sad, but there's not much we can do about it at this point. Okay, that's a good start to that, but I'm gonna need more Caladan Green. My wet palette is all out of that paint, so we're gonna need to grab some more. Hopefully not as much. We need to now work on our little art here to gauge exactly how much of this paint is needed, so we can finish this model without having too much excess left over. Let's go with this much. Let's see if that's okay. Start with this helmet here. Sadly, I'm running out of paint again on my wet palette. I'm gonna need some more to finish up this guy before heading back to our first one. Okay. We need to go back and get some more Caliban green, and we can finish up the first coat of our second guy before we can return to our first one. Okay. Is that really it? Is there any other spots that I'm missing? There's some parts that are kind of lacking some color, but that's to be expected for the first coat of Caliban green. It's not really one that's meant to be completely uniform all the way throughout, because we'll be layering on other colors on top of the sky. So, not necessarily our biggest concern to try to get 100% coverage, but at least enough we can work off of for the other layers that are going to settle in on top of him. Okay, that's good enough for what we're doing here. So we got our second guy done with his layer of Caliban green. So we got 2 of them so far with our time that we worked on them. So with that, let's return to first guy and let's see if we can get going on some brighter areas with our next color. So I really make sure I clear out all the paint off this brush, because we're going to switch over to a number 1. And the brushes I'm currently using are real hairs with these are Da Vinci's or Golden Maple's finest sable. So gotta make sure I take care of these brushes because they did cost a bit more. I have 2 number 2s? What? I don't know that set came like that. It's a number 0. Can I get a number 1, please? Number 1. Okay, thank you. So we're gonna go give ourselves a number 1 brush, a little bit thinner than the number 2, but should still be able to get us exactly what we need in terms of being able to work around now, if we can get it right here. So we're using AK's dark green is what I used as well with doing my Inner Circle companions, which some of you may have seen me work on quite a little while ago. We got 3 more also that we need to work on again. So that same exact process will be used. There'll be one big squad of 6 guys in that one there. Hopefully this paint still holds, because sometimes AKs, if you don't shake it well enough, it gets a little bit dilute on one side. But specifically, we can take a look to see what this looks like when we add it on top of the Caliban green over here. Yeah, it's a little bit thin on the pigments there, but already from the start, if the camera can focus, there's a lot more of a pop, although the camera doesn't even like picking up all the color that's coming out of it. But even though it just looks a bit more bright, it adds a bit more color to that shoulder pad. So I think what I need to do here first is to really give this guy a shake so that we can get a more consistent color. That's more like it out of this. That's more like it. Okay. This is kind of the main color of the armor that we want on this guy. So with that, we're going to focus on trying to coat around most of the parts that are going to be hitting the lighter areas with this green, and see to it that we can get a good system going on the way this model is going to look now. So this will be less inside the crevices. It'll be much more on the full-on faces of each of the armor pieces. So I'm not going to go so far into going to the crevices, but we can now start to see there's a bit more contrast going on, even though my colors on my camera are completely washed out. We have to figure something out about that. But that's what we actually, can I just change that right now? Oh, no, not deactivate, that's the wrong one. Can we get more saturation on this, please? That might show a little better. That we do have a brighter green working on this, but it's still very washed out on the amount of light in the camera that I currently have, sadly. Still kind of just pushing the pigments around. I'm not really getting a good layer on this right now, but we'll have to just come back and do it again then. Same idea is going to happen here. Not too bad on camera, but in real life, we'll work on the way that this guy looks like soon. That's part of it. We'll experiment with the way that this looks, so that way we can get a better idea once this all comes together. Okay. Nope, let's not drop the model this time. course. Twitch would just love to disconnect whenever it wants to, which is fine, I guess. Okay. This is what we're looking at towards the end of this guy's armor coloring here. At least the second layer. We'll be doing one more with edge highlighting with a different color. We can come back to that as well. I always keep forgetting it's always so elusive, his little thigh pads here of extra armor plating. Always seems to get the best of me. On something like that. But nonetheless, though, this is going to be just about it for this guy's second layer. We'll go to his third layer soon. Now, every time we take a closer look, this is where we see all the spots that we've missed. Which is going to be entirely of this guy's backside here, of his leg. Okay. And of course, one last area is going to be on his upper torso here before we get to the wings on his chest. This part needs to also be cut in properly. All right, so that's going to be this guy taken care of so far. And then we'll get over to his edge highlights afterwards. So I do like this green a lot, although it kind of blends the line between the Salamander's green and the Dark Angel's green, but so far, not too bad on that. Okay, so we're gonna go with our second model, do the same exact treatment here. So I'm gonna reset my brush and do the same thing with the same dark green from AK to be able to continue this model's journey into being fully painted. Okay, so again, we're still using AK's dark green as well. We just always need to make sure we give it a good shake so that we can really make sure all the pigments are evenly spread out before we dollop any of it onto our wet palette here. And let's get into it. Okay, so his shoulder pad's done. Let's go to his legs again. This needs a good coat because we have a lot of surface area to go over on his legs for sure. Okay. So that should take care of this guy's second coat of paint as well. And we can go to back to this first and let's see if we can get some edge highlights going on with him. There's some of the edge highlight action going on, and we'll see exactly what that will look like onto that model. Make sure that's completely cleared up. And for edge highlighting, I will use a zero brush for that instead, so that we can get just to even more accuracy with our brush. Yep, here's my zero brush. And we will be using AK's light green now. So we switch from dark green to a light green. This one should be able to give us a lot more of the edge highlighting colors, so that we can get a good pop on the edge areas of this guy's armor. So let's go over to the first model with all of his paint dried up here. See what this. So pallette's a little tilted because of the way my mat is set up, but let's see here. Make sure that is fully hydrated. Okay. The tip frays a little bit on this guy. I don't know why. But we should be good enough to get going here. Okay. So let's see if we can really make this magic happen here. That is, if we go around the very outer edge of his shoulder pad, that should give it a lot more depth to the armor than it would normally would have. That's kind of a thick line. Can work on getting that line a little bit thinner as we work towards this curve of his shoulder pad here. That's a really thick line, eh? Well, thick line nonetheless, but we'll accept that as an acceptable edge highlight for this guy's shoulder here. There you go, got that connected. So it's a little detail, but it does even when the camera's out of focus, because that's what my camera loves to do, is that we get pretty nice depth going on with the shape of his shoulder pad there. So we'll do that for the other side, and if I can stop dropping my model everywhere, this still will be on that shoulder pad, and now we gotta do it for the other side. A little bit tricky at times to try to make sure that we want a thin line. We definitely don't want like a super thin line, but we do want a thin line nonetheless. But of course, with good old shaky hands from me, we're gonna get not the most consistent line, but that's okay. The inconsistency makes it more artistically mine. At least that's the way I like to cope with it. So we'll just accept it as the way that it is, and we keep moving along here as we fill in the edge with this very light green as a little bit of a highlight towards that really pulled up. Oh, well, we thankfully it pulled up on the side of the edge there, so we'll clean that up with the trim of the shoulder pad later on. So we'll just go around here. Again, that's kind of the nice thing about understanding the way that you want to paint your model. We'll get to a point where you can work with the mistakes that you make, because your last result will end up a lot more nicer once you know the steps that you're going to take. So we'll take that for both of his shoulder pads here. It's not the most perfect way. This has actually got a little bit dilute there at the edge. We don't want that. I'll make sure that's completely taken care of there. Okay. So we got that set up there. And then now we can start looking at some other parts here of his armor that would need the similar kind of treatment to be able to give some depth. So for example, we can go to his helmet here, and on this upper edge portion, we can just do some of that. And we pull it back a little bit. So again, these Space Marine helmets have like a little fake crest, almost like a fake mohawk. Very, very slightly raised edge along the top side of their heads. As you move that around there. A little bit of edge highlight around the eyes, and color that in red later on as well. Kind of too thick of a line onto the brush there. So this way we can get a bit more depth around the eye as well once we finally fill that in with the red coloring for the lens of the helmet. And then I think that's about mostly what we want to do with the helmet so far. We can come back to it later. That's the thing about edge highlighting. You always come back later when you realized you missed a lot of spots. But let's go to his power pack now. And we can start following along the edges of the surface of the armor there. So follow along this edge there. Okay. See, work towards trying to make thinner lines. So the pool is a bit thick on some parts, but it not being perfect is part of the deal of painting these kinds of models. So not too upset about that. Okay. Well, that was a really good line on his hand. Of course, the other lines around it not so good, but whatever. Such is life on that. I can start moving on to his legs here. Just hopefully we can get our final really depth to pop out with these edge highlights on the leg, because very monotone green right now, but perhaps all this together with our lower underneath shade of the Caliban green will make this all turn to a nice reality for us. Hopefully, sorry, my hand covers a lot of times when we're going to this level of detail, but at least we get to see in between every time where those lines are going on this model. Kind of a thick line on the back of his leg, but thankfully it's the back of his leg, so it won't be seen as much. Wait, that kind of went over that spot a bit much. Oh well. I think we can live with that for now. It's not really too distracting. Oh, that's a really thick line. What's going on there? Now let's try to refocus again here. Maybe not make so much of a big splatter of this super bright green all over this guy's armor. I suppose we'll take that as the amount of edge highlighting that we can get properly fitted for this guy. Make sure all the edges that we're looking for have been filled out. Now we have to go to the extraordinarily hard to reach places, like behind his back here. Okay, I think this is gonna be more or less the edge highlights complete for this guy. So it does give a lot more depth and detail to this guy's armor, I must say. Just some spots are a little bit scuffed up than others, but I definitely will take this as a means to be able to show what this guy's armor will look like. Now, is it time to be a little bit brave? Because bravery will, for me, will come in the form of trying to put a good plasma effect on his gun. We can go straight to that, thankfully, because these are edge highlights, not a big surface area of paint needs to be dried. So with the same model, we can go straight into testing out. After all this hard work I put into highlighting all the edges to this guy's armor, we'll see if we can get a good plasma effect going on to his gun. So, I think I'd like to try first. I'm trying to think of this. So we can get started with some of this Arctic Gem. I've used this many times before, especially in my Tau models to get a base for the bright plasma. But something that I could try to do here, if I have the color for it, find it, yep. We have some good old Talisar Blue as a contrast paint to be able to work our way around some colors. I'm gonna make sure I don't actually use my natural hair brush on that, but nonetheless, we can get that to go. And then we can try to work with some white as well as the final highlights to that. So, okay, this is gonna be a little bit of a bravery test to see if we don't completely mess up this guy. But I do think we have a good chance of making something good happen here. So, War Painter's Arctic Gem is gonna be our first starting point right here. Okay. So we can still use our zero brush for now, because it's not a very big surface area for the panels which have the plasma on there. So what I'd like to try to do is that we first get this first layer of Arctic Gem on there, and then we can try to use some contrast paint to try to get into the grooves with a more brilliant blue, and then start working on some highlights on the edges there for the white to go right on top. So work on that first, and then we can see if we can try to get a bit of spreading, because the idea is obviously that if it's emitting a light source from this part of the gun, that we should be seeing a reflection of that color across other parts. Although I just realized I think I need to paint the rest of the gun first before I try to do any reflections, because obviously it needs to show underneath the regular colors of the gun itself. So let's just let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's just go ahead and make sure we get all the, again, I'm really focused more on the raised surfaces. The crevices underneath will all be taken care of by the contrast paint. Hopefully it can show up as a more brilliant blue, as I stated, instead of the Arctic Gem. So we'll accept that for now. And so we then need to get to some silver on the rest of the main parts of the gun that are going to be silver. So the idea is that we had silver here on this edge there, silver on the cable and some of the knobs, and then some red on the surrounding areas as the casing of the gun. So let's go with AK's silver. Use this a number of times as well on some, oh, that's really reflective. Okay, some AK silver, I use that as well on some other parts of different models. So we've used this a number of times as a good starting metallic paint, and we'll work our way through here. So let's get this guy silvered up, and we can work our way with some, maybe some char effects, or maybe even some again, I really like the effect of my blue contrast paint on top of this silver underlayer once it's dried. It does add a nice shiny blue effect, which might have a way to work with this gun in specific, or specifically is a better way to let's say that. Thinking to swap the brush here. My brush size too small. 0 is too small. Let's go up it to a 1, and we might have better luck spreading the pigment properly on the silver. A number 1 brush. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm doing a lot of pushing the pigment around with the smaller brush. I think if we get a larger brush, we should be able to get a good coat of the silver on parts that we want it to. Okay, so that part is silver. Let's go silver onto the cable as well. We need to spread that around. Okay, not too bad on the cabling there. And then we have some knobs in the back of his backpack edition here that we want to color in silver as well. And let's just paint that last part silver as well. Okay, so that works for that part of his gun. And then let's see too, let's get some reds in there. But also, actually, what we can do before we do that, we can get to using some contrast paint to really get inside the crevices of the part where the plasma is. So we'll need to use a different brush because I don't want to stain my natural hair brushes with any of that nonsense there. Where is my number 2 big brush? Right here. Yes. Okay. I got a good old cheap synthetic brush here with a good old number 2. The hairs are kind of stuck together. I have to figure out a way to unstick that later on, but as of right now, we'll use our good old contrast paint to be able to... I really got in there. Well, let's go ahead and layer some onto this. So because contrast paint works almost like an ink, it does a very good job running into all the small crevices of the ridges that we are looking to get into. Okay, so once that's dry, we can go over another layer, depending how it dries as well. We can go with another layer of Arctic Gem, so should give us more of that brilliant blue look. And you know what, let's be a little bit brave here. Let's go to the end nozzle here and let's go ahead and slap on some of this contrast onto this part of the silver. Okay, sure. That will do. And now my very cheap synthetic brushes are very well tinted that same blue of the contrast paint, but such is the way that it goes. And they're cheap brushes. Where did I put the... There. Okay. So wait for that contrast paint to dry. Let's go ahead and get a little bit of a red here. I do like... What's it? The Screaming Evil Suns or Mephiston. You know, let's go with some Mephiston red. So we got some base Mephiston red here. I'll use to do on the main body of the plasma gun. We have a good contrast to work off of when we start doing our reflection of the gun. So let's go get our number 1 brush again. Let's scoop out a little bit of this Mephiston red. And let's see how we can really form up the body of this guy's gun. So start down here with this underhand grip. So we can have this guy all completely covered. Okay. And what the heck, let's just do the main body as well. Let's just see what that looks like, even though there's two separate parts there that could be two separate colors. Let's just go with Mephiston Red all the way around, and we'll see if we need to change the colors if needed. We have to do this in multiple layers. The pigment is not that strong. I thought I gave this bottle a good shake, but I don't know. The pigments don't seem very concentrated in this current layer of this red. Trying to think. Suppose we can get away with some more silver as well at this point. If that part is going to be red. We can have a little bit more silver in that backside. And perhaps, maybe silver, and then we can throw on some gray on top of that as well. To maybe give it a little bit more color variety, because right now we basically have two so far. Silver on his railing, as this railing there. Because maybe with more of a dilute gray, we can turn some parts more of a gunmetal than it is like a full silvery silver, if that makes any sense at all. But also, maybe my thing right now is that maybe we need some edge highlights on the red part of the gun too. That way, it will pop out a little bit more. So you know what? Yeah, I've got an idea. Let's finish up this section here in that silver color. So include the actual back of the gun as well. Okay. Let's go back to some actually. Yeah, let's go back to red. And then we can edge highlight a little bit on that part before we go back into the plasma effect that we're still working on. Let's go grab a little bit more red here. Okay, I'll take that. So let's see what we can do now with this plasma business here on the top of his gun. So we're done with this number 0 brush right now. We have to go, that was number 1. And the Twitch disconnects again. Oh. Back to our number 0. And let's go grab some more Arctic Gem here. So we return back to the plasma side of things now. We want just a very thin layer on the upper ridges here. And we can actually intentionally just leave the outer parts alone. So we still have a lot of area that is still in the contrast blue of the Telestar blue, still up and available. Just trying our best not to get in the way of the actual inside the ridges. That's what the contrast paint took care of. And we have this. Not too bad. You can start to see a little bit of a gradient there, hopefully, if the camera can pick it up. Maybe the camera's distortion might even make this plasma look better. But in the case, we're gonna wait for that to dry, because I do want to do one last highlight with white, just on the very outer edges. Sorry, just on the very outer edges of this this guy here. So, in the meantime, let's go ahead and get a little bit of Evil Sunz Scarlet here. This will be, if the camera will show it, this will be our highlight color for the red as well. So, is there something wrong with the lid of this guy? Like, why would that close? Is there dried paint on that? Oh, there might be. There's some dry paint near the lid of this this paint pot, but yeah, I think there is. But we'll have to deal with that after the fact. Right now, let's get some. That's very watery. Oh, because it's a layer paint. That's why. Huh. Why am I so surprised all of a sudden? Oh, whatever. Okay. Nonetheless, that should still be enough to act as our highlight color in between these crevices for the red portions of this gun. Because as a more thinner consistency, it's actually easier to control on the edges there. So this should add a little bit more depth to all the spots that we painted red. Get some of the raised areas in this Evil Sunz, although it doesn't necessarily show up the best, but still a little bit of a contrast to it, maybe. I don't know if it shows up that well. And maybe if it's wet, it still reflects off that light, but nonetheless though, that's currently what we have so far. Okay. All right. So let's get some of this regular white here, and let's see if we can add some final touches to this guy here. Now, do I have something smaller than a 0 with my sable brushes? Yes, I have a 3/0. Okay. We can use that. That will definitely work for us. Where did the... Oh, there's a cap to my 0 brush. Okay, so one of my thinnest brushes that I have available to me right now, we're going to go ahead and try to add the final highlight touches onto this guy's plasma gun. because white is the brightest color, we don't need very much of it at all. I'm just going to follow. We're just here to follow the outer ridges here of the plasma area of this gun. Okay. Oh, I'll have to take it for what it is. And the camera does a great job of not focusing on exactly what is right in front of it. But, man, is it really my own desk light that's screwing over this camera? But that's what we're doing. Although I can see the artifacting of low light issues. But that's what we have so far on this guy. And with that, we should now get into the business of, if I can get the last white pigments out of this brush. Okay, now we can get into the business of reflecting some of that light onto other areas of the gun. So this is exactly where I said it's going to take a bit of bravery, because normally this will kind of be messing up our work so far in other areas. That's through of a zero, you're done for. My regular zero brush, yeah, good. Okay, so let's go get this guy and let's see where we can start adding a little bit more of that Arctic blue as a reflection into some areas. Maybe we should find a way to dilute it a little bit too. Take a little bit of the water that we have on the side here. So the idea first is that we're going to have to go all the way around. And a little bit of an outline. Okay, let's make that a little bit thicker. And then I think the more blue we have down the body of the gun, the more believable it is that it is glowing and is reflecting off the main area of that. Okay, and then lastly, let's go ahead and keep that dilute Arctic gem, and let's see if we can get some last areas here. Okay, it's a little bit messy, but I'll have to accept that for now as one of my first ways of trying to get a reflective lighting effect on the gun. I'm trying to think what would have made it better, but as of right now, that's what we have to work with. Okay, let's let's finish this guy with his eye lens as well, or the lens of his helmet. Still have just a little bit of Mephiston red left over. Let's see if we can surgically add in those two spots there. Okay. And that should do it. This is our first Hellblaster complete, I think, to, of course, the Twitch disconnects. But this is going to be our first complete Well, I forgot he has a belt too. Jeez. I just start talking and then now the Twitch disconnects and then we're not even done yet. We're gonna have to go back to that silver again. Let's get his belt line in. Okay. What if we can be a little bit lazy with this belt? His belt is not important. What's more important is the gun and the type of edge highlighting that we managed to get onto his. Bro, this model is literally right in front of the camera. Why is it so difficult for this thing to focus on it? Jeez. You know what? I have to figure this one out. This is getting a little bit beyond me as to why. I'm gonna bring that bright. I guess we bring that brightness a bit down. Let's bring that exposure a little bit down. Ooh, that's really dark, isn't it? Yeah. Nope. Nope. There really is no other way to bring that back, don't we? Okay. Okay, whatever. We'll have to accept that for now, for what it is. But this is going to be the first Hellblaster complete here. And with that, we have, looks like the exact recipe that we need to then work on the rest of them. So we did have this guy prepared, and this is hopefully, I think this might be the complete this model. That might be it for today. But nonetheless, though, I think this is pretty productive as to how we are able to get one complete model done, and we can then move on to some other guys later. So this guy, we did complete the outer layer of that AK's dark green, so it's very much more pronounced as to what we're dealing with that. This is my number 0, very good. So we can go back to doing our edge highlights with the light green, AK's light green that we've done with the other model as well. So let's see to it that we can get this started. I personally like to start with edge highlighting on the shoulder pad first, because you do have a lot more leeway with how much you can show, because it is just a shoulder pad. You do get a lot of depth out of it one way or another, because there's a very large surface area to have that coated in. Let's just make sure that we have that guy. Okay, got that one going there. Let's get to his helmet here. That's a very diagonal line on top of his power pack. Unfortunate. Oop. Okay. So that is mostly the edge highlighting done on this model. And give it a once over, it should be just about all that we were looking to do. Maybe just a tad, a few more touches on this part of the power pack. Okay. Let's go back to some silver, because I know there's a lot of parts in silver we have to take care of. Let's go do that first. You know, let's be a bit prudent about it. Let's go get our number 2 brush and do it with that. You can get a lot of surface area done with this brush. Oh, well, Twitch is doing such a great job of just disconnecting whenever it wants to. I think that we're kind of hitting our record of number of disconnects we had in one session. Well, again, as always, YouTube is completely fine. Let's see, I just gotta answer this quick message here. Oh, that's right. Stepwise, I do need to make sure we get started on getting to the plasma side of things. Okay. We should find that as an acceptable amount of silver on the gun. So first and foremost, let me get back to my zero brush here. And let's get to our first layer of Arctic Gem again. So yeah, just the upper layers are just what's important right now, because those, as before, the under layers will be taken care of by the contrast paint we're going to throw on top of it. Just going to make sure we get good coverage on the upper layers. Okay, that's good. We're going to slap on some more reds as we wait for that to dry. So I'm going to need some good old Mephiston red again, because we were running a little bit low on that. I'm going to come back and do multiple layers of the Mephiston red as well. Right, so far we want to get this first layer going so we know which parts are red. Okay. Now let's get to the contrast paint again. And borrow a good old beat up number 2. So we are definitely not going to use a nice brush for contrast paint. No, sir. All right, so let's go shake this bottle up. Get a nice amount to work with. And let's get to coming across here. Okay, and let's go on the outer edge of the gun nozzle there. Okay, good with that. Okay, let's come back with the 0 here. Let's do one more layer of Mephiston Red, and let's get to the eyes as well. Can't forget about that at all. Okay, and then let's start one last layer of Mephiston Red on the main body of the gun. Although let's try not to eke into the contrast paint there, that would be bad. We bled into some of it. Oh well. All right, and then we'll give that a second to dry there, because we need to come back with some more Arctic Gem. So in the meantime, I do like to see and try and see, because I want to do a little bit of an experiment here. If we went straight into the dark green without the Caliban green underneath one of these guys, just to get an idea what that would look like. Because I know for a fact if the paint gets a little bit spotty, without the Caliban green there, it will look very dark in certain areas of a single piece of metal, which kind of don't want, or a single piece of armor. I mean, they are made out of metal lore-wise, I suppose, but dude, this camera does such a great job of just like losing focus of whatever it's in front of. We live in a society with this guy, I'm sure. Yeah, I can kind of already tell even before the paint dries that it's going to be quite spotty without the Caliban green underneath the layer there. So I suppose it will be without question that we definitely need Caliban green underneath this guy's armor every time we paint it. So we'll stop it right there for now with that guy. That contrast is taking a little bit of time to dry. That's all we really need, make sure, because all we really need is just going to be, I mean, we can work on the outline, I suppose. On the glowing outline outer edge of the plasma effect. All right. We'll take that. And let's go back to our Arctic Gem full force here. And let's see if we can revamp that bright color first. Use it as a starting off point, and then we can come back to some of that white. And we'll finish off today's session with the last highlighting of the plasma here. And where is, I just do such a great job of losing the caps of my brushes. Huh. This one's kind of really lost. Normally they'd show up in a little bit, but... Oh, yes, of course, there it is. Where? Oh no, my 3/0, I put it back. Yeah, okay. Maybe suppose the safe space maybe is just back there. Sure. Okay. And that will do it for today, I believe. We've done a pretty good progress. I got 2 out of these guys out of all 10 that were, to my standard, is completely painted. So we'll come back again on Thursday to do some more for sure. So, in either case, though, we're back to our normal schedule of streaming on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we should be back again on Thursday about the same time to be able to continue our progress on these Hellblaster Marines. So we got 2 of them out of the 10 that we have so far. It's not too bad of a product, I would say, myself, for my first time painting these kind of guys specifically, but at least we can get the full squadron done soon enough. So thank you everybody for stopping by to watch, and we'll be back again